Hi, this is my development log for Temporal, the game that I submitted for the GoedWare game jam. So on the first day of the jam, I was mainly preparing to move out of university, so on that day I didn't have a whole lot of time to do anything from the jam, although I did think about some ideas and write down some designs in a document. At this point I was kind of planning to see if there was anyone I knew that would be interested in teaming up to complete the jam. However, since I was moving out that day and I hadn't committed anything yet, I decided to wait on that idea. So in the end, the idea I decided to go with for the jam was a puzzle game about manipulating time and space in order to achieve the goal, because that fits with the theme, which was broken physics. And so manipulating time was something that I had experimented with a little bit before, but I've had little success up until this point, and the previous idea I had it didn't work out. I lost motivation on it and never went through with it, so a jam was kind of the perfect place to continue with this line of ideas. And the reason I joined this jam in the first place was because after watching a talk on YouTube, some of the points really resonated with me. Mainly the idea that experienced developers often over-engineer their projects and just don't get anything done even after spending months working to create a game framework for building the game. And at this point, I thought that I really just needed to get something done and completely deprioritize code quality and maintainability. So ultimately, this was a really good idea to join this jam because I've got something done which I failed to get done in the past, mainly because of that problem of over-engineering. So to finish off the first day, I just coded a really basic framework for moving backwards and forwards through timelines using the Q and E keys. This was meant to serve as kind of like a stepping stone into the future, so I didn't code anything complex like the time travel elements yet, and that definitely was going to cause a lot of bugs and issues in the future. But for now, the game works by having each individual time frame as a set of separate objects. The engine that calculates the next step finds all the objects which are marked as needing updates. It then calculates the next object in the timeline sequence that represents them, so objects like movers will take one step and then return that new object that has been moved one step forward. They can move forward and backwards in a time, which means that timeline generators sometimes have to go back to regenerate a timeline that's already been generated, but when it goes back it only processes the things that previously haven't been processed already. So if something goes back in time, then the generator will move back to the time step that it went to and then continue processing from there. On the second day of the jam, I really needed to just finish up some work that I didn't get completed by the first day, since at this point the timeline generation mechanics weren't fully implemented. By the end of the day, I kind of planned to have the portal placement and timeline generation fully implemented, but in the end I didn't get all of that done, and I only managed to get the actual portal placement mechanics working, which was pretty decent since draggable UI elements is something that I have struggled with a lot in the past, especially with Unity. At this point, I still had a lot of motivation since it was right in the start of the jam. It kind of went down a little bit throughout the course of the game jam, but I still got quite a bit done, especially in the midpoint of the jam, which is usually when I'm working least efficiently. It was only really towards the end, maybe the 9th or 10th day, when I started to just think yeah, I'm probably not gonna have enough time to do this, and I just went and did other things, which is why the game I think felt a bit lacking, and I could have improved that, but at the same time I think it was okay the way it was. So on the third and fourth day, I really wanted to just finish off that timeline generation mechanic, so that's what I was working on. In the end, by the end of the fourth day, I still didn't have the actual timeline generation mechanics fully working. I think at this point I could move the object backwards in time, but sometimes they would fail to generate properly. Sometimes they would move forward in time, or moving forward in time just wouldn't work properly. And sometimes the movers would just not interact with the portals at all, the little cog would just walk through the portal, especially if there was two portals. Two portals was just not working at all, and this was due to the way I believe it was due to the way the bumping code worked. It wasn't properly checking if it needed to collide with objects. So if something went back in time, then it would no longer be able to collide with any objects that had previously been generated, so that needed a bug fix. In the middle of the jam, I had 2 things I needed to do outside of the game jam, so I missed 2 full days of coding, which kind of sucked, but also provided like a nice break, I think, which let me work a bit better on the other days. On the 27th, which is the 6th day of the jam, I got like nothing done the day before because I had the other things to do, and at this point I plan to implement a level loading system and buttons that could be used to create puzzles. So the main menu, the buttons that are like 1, 2, 3 and let you choose which level you want to play. That's what I wanted to get done. I did have someone message me on Discord and provide some motivation, which was quite nice, and it was a good boost to the motivation to keep going. And the next day, on the 28th, I was doing some more stuff outside of the game jam again, so all I could really do was just sit there and think about what I wanted to get done. Some of the things I thought about was buttons and logic gates. I think especially with being able to move backwards in time, you can kind of have 2 of the same person on screen at once, and this lets you have some really interesting puzzles. This was something I explored in the 3rd level, like right at the end. But something else I thought about is having boulders or moving objects that you maybe like you have to outrun, something like Indiana Jones where there's a boulder coming towards you but you can go back in time to behind the boulder or something like that. Restrictions on where you place the portals. I thought, really, I'm gonna need this if it's gonna be like, otherwise you could just place a portal. If there's like a gate separating you from the portal, you could just put a portal through the gate and just teleport to the other side. So that was something that needs to be done. And one of the biggest ideas that I had but couldn't get implemented in this jam, unfortunately, was the idea of the things that move being able to interact with themselves and others, and different mover types. So a bit like in the game Lemmings, you can have a bomber type, and that will kind of blow up around it, and then that causes some other dynamic. I'm not sure if the bomber is part of Lemmings or if it's another game, but that kind of idea where maybe one of the cogs could be like a bomber, and if it touches another cog then it would trigger an explosion nearby, which then you can go back in time or forward in time and have some effect that comes from that. That would have been really interesting to implement. However, there is the huge problem of time paradoxes. For example, if someone goes through a portal, comes out of the portal, then stops themselves going through the portal, then what happens? Really, we need to be able to branch the timelines at that point, and this was just something that I wouldn't be able to support within the time of the jam. Changing the direction of the movers was also something that I wanted to do. This was something that I did get done in the end with the little arrows. It was a very simple implementation, but it worked quite well, and it let you do a lot more with the things. And 2 other ideas I had. One was enemies, which maybe like they touch you and you die, and they can also go back in time through your portal, so that could cause some interesting puzzle dynamics of having to send one back in time and then having to deal with that in another way. Or changing the colors of the movers. So for example, like a blue cog can interact with blue buttons, a green cog can interact with green buttons. That could provide some interesting things, especially with the idea of time travel. That one would have worked well, but that wasn't one that I had enough time to do. So the next day after that day of thinking, I realized at this point it's very rapidly approaching the end of the jam, and I have a full day to start finishing the game off, and really I don't want to add too much like brand new things. I want to add some new things to make some good puzzles, because at this point I was kind of realizing I have this time travel mechanic, but I'm not really using it very well, and there's not really many good puzzles I can make with the time travel mechanic alone. Like, sure, you can push a button, but like the only thing that's useful is the spatial manipulation aspect of the portals and not the time at the moment. So what I wanted to do was add logic gates, like an AND gate, and this is used in the final levels, so you have to kind of manipulate the time so that you have 2 cogs, which is actually 1 cog, but 1 cog from the future, and they both work together to push the buttons at the same time, and then one of them will go into the past so it can push the button, and then the one from the past will push the button along with the one from the future and then move on to exit the level. It's really confusing, but this is kind of really this is where the game shines. The kind of confusing nature of time travel, going back in time to help yourself, and then you getting helped from your future self, which is absolutely insane, and really that's a lot of fun. For the second to last day of the game jam, I wanted to add as many deep mechanics as possible and just complete some puzzles. I wrote a few ideas down on the board, and I got everything I wanted to do done because there was a few bugs that needed fixing as well. And I was pretty happy with how much I got done in this day. I think the second to last day is where I got AND gates fully implemented, I got the gates implemented, I got the directional arrows implemented, I fixed some bugs with the portal, and this was kind of the day where I did a lot. This was almost all the features were done on this day, which I kind of wish this day was earlier in the jam, to be honest, because I would have had more time to design levels. But at the same time, I think it was reaching a point where like burnout levels were getting high enough such that any more time and I probably wouldn't have been able to do a whole lot more. I feel like maybe I would need like a week-long break and then another week-long jam to properly stay efficient in this game. And then moving on to the final day, it was the final jam. I did something in the morning which I wanted to get done. I believe it was either a bug fix or a little polishing thing. I think I did the menu on this day, and then by the end of it I thought, okay, I really should get a level editor in. It would make it easier for me to make puzzles, and it would let other people make puzzles, and that would just be an absolute wow factor. But at this point I was super burnt out, and in the end I just decided to go shopping instead, since that was something I needed to do. And yeah, that was it for that day. So there was a lot more I could have done, but in the end I just didn't get it done, and ultimately I didn't really want to get these things done, just because, you know, I've been working on this game a lot. 10 days is like quite a long time for a game jam, like especially if you're moving quickly and rapidly developing the game. It's on the level of almost being like a game marathon rather than a game sprint. So it was a very interesting experience, and I really enjoyed this jam. It was definitely something I would do in the future. My main reason for doing it being I wanted to make a game within a week, just so I wouldn't over-engineer, and if the idea was crap I could trash it. If the idea was good, maybe I can work on it in the future, and this is definitely something that I think was absolutely worthwhile doing. And every single game jam I feel like I'm getting better and better at making games, and this one was honestly probably one of my best, and the feedback around it has been really good so far, and I'm really happy how this one turned out. It's definitely something that would be like valuable to explore in the future, and I think this could really turn out to be like an absolutely amazing game if those time travel mechanics are really well honed. However, it does still need a lot of work, and just after finishing the game jam I feel like that's not something I want to do right now. So maybe in the future I'll probably return to this idea and continue expanding on it, but I do need a bit of a break from the game jams now, so I'm just going to take some time off for a while and do some of my university work, like go into lectures and whatever else needs to be done for that. So yeah, thank you for listening to my development log for how the GoedWare game jam went. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I really like this jam, and the theme of this jam was absolutely amazing. I love playing some of the other games as well, and I hope to do some more on video or on stream in the future, so stick around and make sure to watch them. And yeah, thanks for watching, have a good day. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.